And a former Alaska Bush People reality star, Matthew Brown, has died. Two of his brothers confirmed it online. A sheriff office in Washington says a group of people were searching for him along a river yesterday when he was found.
For more than a decade, Matt Brown was one of the faces that introduced millions of viewers to a family unlike any other on television. As the eldest child of Billy and Ami Brown, he helped anchor Discovery Channel's Alaskan Bush People through its earliest and most watched seasons. So when news broke in late May 2026 that Brown had gone missing near a river in Washington state, and then that a body had been recovered, fans who had followed the family since 2014 found themselves bracing for the worst. What followed was one of the more painful chapters in the show's long history, not because of anything staged for cameras, but because of a private struggle that had been building for years. The story began with an emergency call. According to the Okanagan County Sheriff's Office, a witness told 911 dispatchers he had just spoken to a man sitting in shallow water along the Okanagan River. Moments later, that same witness reported something disturbing. He looked away briefly, heard a sound, and turned back to find the man face down, drifting with the current. Deputies, firefighters, and emergency medical crews responded quickly, but an initial search failed to locate him. Investigators later found a firearm near the spot where the man had been sitting, though authorities did not immediately release his identity while the search continued. For the Brown family, the following days were an agonizing blend of hope and dread. Bear Brown, one of Matt's younger brothers, addressed the uncertainty directly on social media before there was any confirmation, telling followers he was hearing that his brother had taken his own life near a river the night before, while cautioning that witnesses, not authorities, were the source of that account. It was an unusual moment of a public figure narrating a family tragedy in real time, unsure himself of what was true. The wait ended on May 30th, when a private search team succeeded where earlier searches had not. Okanagan County officials confirmed that the body had been recovered from the river and identified by the county coroner, with the manner and cause of death left for further examination. Reporting from Us Weekly, relayed through Noah Brown, described how the small search team that found him chose not to leave him in the water, instead loading him into a skiff and bringing him to shore. It fell to Noah, one of Matt's younger brothers, to make the identification. He later wrote simply, "I identified it as Matthew," adding that his oldest brother had passed away. It was Bear who delivered the news to the public most directly, in a video that fans described as raw and unfiltered. He acknowledged that people close to Matt had long worried about where his struggles might lead, but insisted this outcome had never been the one he feared most. As he put it, he had worried Matt might one day overdose, not that he would deliberately hurt himself. Later in the same message, discussing what the coroner's early examination suggested, Bear said the injury appeared to be self-inflicted, while noting that an official determination from the coroner was still pending. Beyond the specifics of the investigation, Bear used the moment to ask something of the public: patience and restraint from speculation. He wanted people watching from home to remember that the family living through this loss in real life was not a storyline. Noah struck a similar note in his own post, framing the tragedy as a reminder to value the people still here. He urged followers, in his words, to tell the people they love that they love them while they still can. To understand why his death hit so many people hard, it helps to remember who Matt Brown was before Alaskan Bush People made the family famous. He was the oldest of 7 children born to Billy and Ami Brown, siblings Joshua, Bam Bam, Solomon, Bear, Gabriel, Noah, Amora Jean, and Merry Christmas Catherine, Rain, followed behind him. When the series premiered on Discovery in May 2014, audiences were drawn to a family that claimed to live largely off the grid, first in remote parts of Alaska and later, as production circumstances shifted, in Washington state. Matt appeared in dozens of episodes across the show's first 8 seasons, often depicted as capable in the wilderness and willing to shoulder responsibility as the eldest sibling. His struggles with alcohol became part of the public narrative fairly early on. In a 2016 interview, he was candid about watching his own drinking escalate, recalling in his own words that it started light and gradually became more than he could ignore. He described the anxiety of admitting the problem to his parents, and the relief he felt when their reaction turned out to be supportive rather than judgmental. That year he completed a 35-day treatment program, describing it afterward as a turning point that gave him a new outlook on life. But recovery, for Matt, was not a straight line. By 2019, he had stepped away from Alaskan Bush People for good, choosing to focus on sobriety away from the pressures of television production. It was a significant moment for longtime viewers. The oldest Brown sibling, who had appeared in the show since its first season, was suddenly no longer part of it. After leaving, He kept a lower profile than his siblings, though he started a YouTube channel where he documented parts of his life and recovery journey, eventually building a following of roughly 65,000 subscribers across more than 1,000 videos. Matt's death was not the first tragedy to test the Brown family in recent years. In February 2021, patriarch Billy Brown died after suffering a seizure at 68 years old, a loss that reshaped the family both privately and on screen. Billy had been the driving force behind the family's entire identity. The person whose vision of an independent, off-the-grid life had turned into a television phenomenon watched by millions. His death left the family to figure out how to continue both their lives and their public story without him. The years around that loss were difficult in other ways too. The massive Washington wildfires of 2020 destroyed the family's mountain home, a blow to a family whose sense of self was tied closely to the land they lived on. Even as some of Matt's siblings moved into new chapters, building careers, starting families, and in early 2026 welcoming news that Rain was expecting her own child, making Ami a grandmother for the 11th time, Matt's path looked increasingly separate from the rest of the family's very public one. After his death, the Brown family released a statement asking the public not to define Matt solely by his hardest years. They described him with warmth, writing that they wanted people to remember the young man who loved the wilderness, could handle rough water, spent hours drawing, and could make people laugh unexpectedly. It was a portrait of someone who, whatever he was fighting privately, was also curious, creative, and deeply connected to the outdoors that had shaped his family's entire story. That balance, acknowledging real struggle while resisting a narrative built only around it, seemed important to those who knew him. Family members and fans alike pointed to the years he spent speaking openly about addiction, something that reality television rarely handles with much nuance, as evidence that Matt tried to turn his own difficult experience into something useful for others watching who might be fighting similar battles. Part of what makes Matt's story resonate is the sheer scale of what Alaskan bush people became. What started as a series about a family living apart from modern conveniences turned into one of Discovery's most-watched programs, running for more than a decade across 14 seasons before ending in 2022. It was never without controversy. Critics long questioned how much of the family's remote lifestyle was authentic versus shaped for production, but the debate never seemed to diminish audience interest. Viewers kept watching, invested in a family whose real lives increasingly blurred with the show's storylines. By the time Matt died, the series itself had been off the air for years, but the emotional connection audiences had built with the family over its run hadn't faded. That's part of why the news of his death, and the unsettling details that came with it, a missing man, a search along a river, a firearm recovered nearby, days of uncertainty before a body was found, spread so quickly and struck so many people so personally. As of the most recent reporting, Okanagan County's coroner had not released a final, official ruling on the cause and manner of Matt Brown's death, though Bear Brown's public comments suggested the family understood the early indications to point toward suicide. The investigation into the exact circumstances remained open in the days following the discovery. What's clear is that Matt Brown's death is not simply a headline about a reality TV figure. It's the story of a man who spent much of his adult life fighting addiction in public view, who found moments of real recovery and moments of painful relapse, and whose family, having already buried a father and lost a home to wildfire, was asked to absorb yet another loss. His siblings' decision to speak honestly, rather than let rumor fill the silence, mirrored the way Matt himself had once chosen to talk publicly about his own struggles. Imperfectly, but openly, in the hope that it might help someone else feel less alone.